Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Latvia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. So the last beers that I've had from this brewery were very nice actually, really solid stuff, but the one that we're going to have a look at today is a completely different style, and I've heard that this brewery are very capable when it comes to this sort of beer. So curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. And always cool to have some Latvian beers to review here on the channel as well. So yeah, for this one then, we are going to return to Jelgava, to the southwest of Riga, the capital city, and we're going to have a look then at another beer from Hopalaa Brewery. So this one is from their Sourbit series, which as far as I can see is a series of Berliner Weisses. This one is the Sourbit Triple Berries. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and as we said, it's a Berliner Weisse with raspberries, blackcurrants and blueberries added into the fermentation. So yeah, I think this one should be quite interesting. As you'll know if you've watched the channel, I'm a big fan of these kind of sour berry type beers, so hopefully this is another good one. But yeah, a big thank you to Remans from the brewery for sending this one and all the other beers over from Latvia. It's been really cool to work my way through these. Like I say, these guys are pretty damn solid in the IPAs. I've heard really good things about these sour beers, and this one will be the first of 3 sour beers that you'll see me review over the next little while. I do have 3 stouts to have a look at as well, so we'll see how far we can get with these. I've held off from these ones for a little bit, but I think it is now about time to crack these open. So yeah, curious to see how it turns out. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. The Sourbit Triple Berries from Hopalaa Brewery in Jelgava over in Latvia. Let's get started. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hopalaa Brewery before, and you will see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Latvian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the chance, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Hopalaa Brewery then. So Hopalaa Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Jelgava in the Zemgale region to the southwest of Riga, the capital city. And the brewery is owned by 3 friends. So this is Rimants Pavziniaks, Kristaps Stankus and Ainars Rumjansevs. So Ainars is a teacher by trade, Kristaps has a background in finance, while Remats owns his own marketing firm. And like I said, it was him that sent me over these beers to take a look at, and a big thank you to him once again. But they apparently discovered craft beer after hearing that a neighbour was brewing something called an IPA, which they had never heard of. And they started homebrewing after having tasted more of these beers in around 2013 under the name Kaliu Alus, which translates into English as the Blacksmith Brewery. But they gradually scaled up their home brewing over time, and having received positive feedback on their beers, they were encouraged by many to turn professional and start their own company, and that's what they did. But over the next few years, they released a good number of different beers under the Kaliu name, quite a few different styles, quite a few like porters and lagers and things from what I remember, as well as a few more American type things as well. But in 2019 they officially registered the name Fermentum, which acts as a parent company, and the beer is released under the brand name Hopalaa. The main idea behind this is that it's an easy name for those in other countries to remember. Latvian, of course, is an extremely complicated language, so unless you grow up with that, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually learn it. But Ainars is the head brewer, while Kristaps takes care of the finance side of things and looks after the yeast, fixes technical problems and all this, while Remats is the marketing man and salesperson for the brewery. So they've got quite a nice setup over there. But the brewery itself is equipped with a 1,000 litre brew kit, and they've been progressively expanding the fermentation capacity over the last little while. But they want to experiment with many different styles, and they collaborate with a lot of other local small businesses to get the adjuncts for their stouts and sour beers and stuff like this as well, which is pretty interesting. But there's also a number of other gypsy brewers brew their beers at the Hopalaa Brewery as well, so that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. These guys are really helping grow craft beer scene in the whole of Latvia, which is great. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 75 different kinds of beer, and so far I've just tried the IPAs mainly. We had a couple of milkshake IPAs, we've had triple, double, single IPAs, and a few paleos and stuff like that as well. So yeah, been impressed with the hoppy side of things from these guys. So as I said earlier, I'm curious to see what the sour side has in store for us, and we'll try the darker end of the spectrum later on as well. But yeah, that's, as I say, all I can really tell you about Hopalaa Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork before we open up. As you can see, there is the Hopalaa symbol on this one, which is very similar to what we've seen on previous beers. The kind of background artwork in this one is quite nice actually. It's like a sort of abstract painting of you know, fruit from a distance or something like that. But yeah, it tells you the stats of the beer on the back. So as we mentioned earlier, this one is a 6.5% Berliner Weisse. The malt base in this one is pale malt, wheat malt and Pilsner malt. It's hopped with a little bit of Cascade, and the adjuncts in this one are raspberries, black currants, blueberries, sea salt, lactose and vanilla beans, and it uses a German ale yeast. So yeah, I think this one should be quite interesting. 440 milliliter can, as you can see, and I'm not sure exactly what this beer would cost you if you bought it in Latvia actually, because these ones were of course sent over by the brewery. But yeah, we'll see what it has in store for us nonetheless, but certainly very nicely presented, this one. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Curious to see what it has in store for us. One thing I would say that's interesting is that they describe it as you know, it's listed as a sort of, it's listed on Untappd as a Berliner Weisse, and I never thought about this before I said that earlier. It's listed on Untappd as a Berliner Weisse, but it's got sea salt in it, and that usually, well, salt of any kind of description would really make it a Gose rather than anything else. So that's interesting. But yeah, it also looks as if it's been filtered as well, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, so we've got pretty much all of it in the glass for the moment, but we'll put the rest in just before we actually taste it. So yeah, anyway, let's see how we go with this one then. So as you can see, and as you would kind of expect from one of these more fruity, juicy, sour type beers, it's poured, you know, a very lovely kind of blackcurrant juice colour, this one. Yeah, lovely kind of rich berry, kind of maroon burgundy sort of thing. So one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the surface there. When we poured the beer, incidentally, it just had a very light, thin, kind of foamy thing to it. But other than that, that's faded away completely, and there's pretty much nothing left. So yeah, lovely clarity to this beer as well. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, but you can see that this beer just has a little bit of a kind of natural haze going on with it too, which is great. But yeah, lovely little bit of just a naturally hazy kind of vibe to it, but certainly one of the kind of more transparent sour beers that you're going to come across these days. Many of the sours that you're going to come across more often these days will be more kind of hazy, like these big hazy Berliner Weisses and Goses and things, but this one, I'm not sure exactly what to expect from this, to be quite honest with you, but it certainly looks very, very nice. So remember, when it comes to determining the colour of your beer, the main factors would be 1, the type of malts that you use. This usually determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Then any barrel aging that you do will also affect it as well for sour beers, of course, and any adjuncts that you add in will affect the colour too. And these two last factors that I've just mentioned are far more prominent in the cases of sour beers than they are of normal beers actually. So yeah, that's definitely worth bearing in mind with this one, but it certainly looks the part of a berry sour. I think we can safely say that. But yeah, curious with this because of how clear it is actually. So yeah, very much looking forward to this, but I don't think there's anything else that we can really say about the appearance of this one. It certainly looks the part, so I think we should take a little look at the aroma then and see how we go. Yeah. Again, it's pretty straight shooting. So I've said this about sour beers before, especially these kind of more modern sour beers, if you like. I always find these beers, remarkably straight shooting, but if they're well produced, then they can be really, really just awesome beers to drink. But yeah, quite straight shooting in terms of their flavour composition and in terms of their aroma, but if executed, they're pretty damn good. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time for your palate to get used to these if you're not used to sour beers, but it's certainly worth putting a bit of time in and just kind of learning to appreciate what these beers can give you. But let's try and break down the aroma of this one properly then and just see how we go. So yeah, on the kind of straight away with this one, you can smell that it does have a wee bit of a kind of white bready backbone to it. You can smell a little bit of that kind of soft barley malt kind of thing in there. This one does have pale malt, wheat malt and pilsner malt in it, but certainly the backbone of this beer is a nice kind of smooth white bready character. You do get one or two little elements of a bread crusty element to it, but yeah, the backbone of this beer is like a kind of white bready character all the way. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is very, very nice, in fact. So yeah, aroma wise, it does go together very, very nicely. It's a really smooth beer, this one, but as I say, compared to some of the other ones I've been having recently from the likes of Elm 11 and Duck Pond and Fermenterna and stuff like that up here in Sweden, this one it just smells a lot lighter and a lot crisper in a sense. So it's interesting. This is maybe a sour that's designed for drinkability rather than being a taster beer, if that makes sense. So that's an interesting perspective to take with this beer as well. But sitting on top of the bready character in this one, you can certainly get a little bit of the vanilla. The vanilla feels as if it's kind of infused into the bread in this one. So yeah, lovely big white bready notes, bit of bread crust, and a big kind of smooth, juicy sort of vanilla character in it too, which I very much appreciate. So yeah, the malty kind of backbone in this one is quite nice. You can detect one or two little elements of kind of sweetness and crispness in there as well, which will be the Pilsner malt. Pilsner malt, I don't know if I've had Pilsner malt in one of these kind of big sour beers before, but you can certainly smell the wee bit of crispness in there, and also that sort of like little McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of thing too. So I do really like how this one goes about its business in that regard. So it gets a thumbs up from me on that point. Yeah, straight shooting malt base in this one. It's certainly not got the big kind of yogurty creamy sort of thing that we've had from other beers within this bracket recently. But yeah, smooth white bready base. You can feel the wheat kind of thickening it out. A little bit of a kind of bready character to it, and as we say, a little bit of a more sort of vanilla element mixed in there as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. Nice big smooth white bready backbone and a bread crusty quality to it as well. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how that goes together in this beer. But yeah, you do get one or two little elements of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity notes mixed in with that too, and that, as I say, is the Pilsner malt, and maybe one or two little slightly woody characters as well. So yeah, I don't get so much of the saltiness. You can kind of get a little bit of it out of the nose, but salt, I think, in these beers is quite hard to detect because of everything else that's in there for sure. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. So on the hoppy side of things, you certainly get a good little bit of green component to this one, so you get a wee tiny bit of earthiness in there. For me, there's a nice kind of quite well-rounded floral aromatic note to this one. I do love a bit of Cascade, and I'm curious to see what role the Cascade actually plays in this beer in terms of the flavour, because Cascade or Eureka or Barbe Rouge, these kind of hops will be really interesting in terms of the kind of sour beers like this. But of course, if you add these hops in, then it can kind of detract a little bit from the sourness of the beer, which is the whole point, because you get a bit more bitterness and whatever. But yeah, as I say, you certainly get a wee touch of a kind of smooth earthiness to it. There's a nice bright floral aromaticity there, and you do get just a wee touch of a kind of more zesty, grassy note in there. But it's certainly got a little bit more of a kind of wet grassiness to it as well, like a bit of that wet leafy kind of thing going on. So certainly there is a proper green component in this one, which I think is quite interesting. I think adding the hops just adds a wee bit more kind of depth to the beer and things like that. But on the fruity side of things, it is pretty much what you would expect. So you can smell a little bit of that kind of more oily figgy note from the Cascade playing a role in there, the fruity esters that you'd extract from the hops. But certainly, you know, you've got a really kind of interesting thing going on with this. I mean, you can smell the tartness from the raspberries. You've got the black currants underneath that kind of sitting, mixing in with the more oily fruit, the more oily kind of figgy note from the Cascade. So the Cascade kind of oily fruit and the sort of black curranty, the sort of softer currants sit underneath, and they form the backbone of the fruits. But the tartness comes from the raspberries, that's for sure. Then you can smell a sort of more round, juicy kind of tartness as well from the blueberries. So I think this one really has a few interesting things to it. It doesn't smell all that complex on the aroma. As I say, these beers are normally quite straight shooting, but I think we might get a fair wee bit of complexity out of this one compared to others when we have a taste of it. So yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we had a taste of this beer to see how we get on. So yeah, take a bit of time on the aroma, as I always say. So yeah, this one is the Sourbit Triple Berries, 6.5% fruited sour ale, I guess we have to say, from Hopalaa Brewery in Jelgava over in Latvia. Really curious about this, so let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, and as they say in Latvia, prieka. Raspberries, black currants, and a wee bit of blueberry. Yeah. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice. That is very nice. Yeah, that is pretty damn solid. I can see why this beer, I think it had a rating of about, it was into the 4s perhaps, I think, when I had a little quick look on Untappd earlier, and you can kind of see why. This is really nice, as I say, very different from the other sours that we've been having in recent times, but the different approach, you know, varying it up a little bit, there's never anything wrong with that. Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really nice beer, this one. It's a very summery beer, of course. I'm just drinking this towards the end of the glorious Swedish summer that we've had. But this is very, very nice. So I'm just going to say straight away, thumbs up to Hopalaa Brewery for this. They've pulled off another solid beer here. So, where do we start with this one? Straight away across the middle third of your palate, and you can feel that nice, smooth, pale malty backbone there. That goes right across the middle third of your palate and right across the back third of your palate. On top of this, you can feel the sort of smoother, wheaty element coming out of it, which I really like. So yeah, nice big kind of smooth, wheaty element to this one, absolutely. And I think, yeah, this is a beer that really, when you consider what aroma you've had off it, the flavours that you get out of it really transpire into the actual taste, if that makes sense. So yeah, this one is very much similar to how we described the aroma. So, as I say, the backbone of this one is smooth, white bready character in there. You can feel the pale malt on the middle third and the back third of your palate. The wheat on top of that just kind of it thickens it up a little bit too, and at either side of that kind of middle third of your palate, you certainly get a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty element to it as well. So bear that in mind. But sitting on top of that that kind of bread, you can feel, or even kind of infused into the kind of wheaty white bread sort of thing. That's when you get the vanilla coming out of this one. The vanilla feels as if it's very much an integral part of the bread and infused into the whole flavour of the beer. So yeah, the middle third of your palate in this one is actually quite sweet, relatively speaking. So yeah, it goes about its business pretty nicely from that side of things. I do like the way the vanilla kind of complements everything else, but I'd say that on top of that, the one thing you will notice, I think you get a wee bit of the kind of more crisp Pilsner malty quality out of this one. So on top of that kind of more vanilla type note, you can feel the nice kind of crisp. You can get a nice little bit of that kind of crisp quality from the Pilsner malt. So if you go right into the dead centre of your palate, you can feel a bit of sweetness there. We'll come back to that in a second though. But if you move from the dead centre of your palate towards the back of that middle third of your tongue, you can really feel the more crisp elements of the Pilsner malt there. But then sitting in the middle of that, you can feel there's a little sort of circle of a kind of Werther's Original. There's a sort of circle of a Werther's Original kind of butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of it. So yeah, that side of things goes together really nicely. Yeah, on top of that as well, you do get one or two. You can feel a little bit of the kind of, you can get a little touch of biscuitiness on this beer towards the very edges of that middle third of your palate too, and that again is the Pilsner malt in there. So it's really, I do like the little touch of adding the Pilsner malt into this one. So yeah, the way that all pieces together, I think, is really quite interesting. So the middle third of your palate in this one is really well executed actually. So yeah, interesting stuff. Let's focus on the back third of your palate then and the other parts of the beer. I don't think there's too much else we really need to say about that middle third of your palate. So if you go into the back, if you go towards the back third of your palate, then you can feel in that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there is a wee bit of a bready build up there, a little bit of bread crust, but again you've got that base of pale malt, the thicker wheaty character, and then a wee bit of the vanillas in there as well, and you do get a little bit of bitiness from the wheat on the very back of the palate too. But on top of all of that, you get a more kind of airy, yeasty sort of thing coming out of this one. So I do like how that pieces together in this beer for sure. So, as I say, yeah, you get that nice, more airy, bready, yeasty character at the back, on that back third of your palate. But when you're at the back third of your palate, as you move further forward, you can feel that the flavour is markedly taller, but then as you move further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, everything just kind of squashes together a wee bit more. So I really do like how that goes together in this beer as well. So yeah, that side of this one is quite nice. The malty side of this beer, I think, works together really well. I don't get much salt in this one, I have to say. I don't really pick up the salt so much in this one, to be honest with you, which is kind of unusual when it's in there, because usually you can get a little bit of it, but I really don't get very much of it at all in this actually. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of the beer there. I think we've said everything we need to about the malty part of it. But yeah, back corners of the palate, you can certainly feel a little touch of earthiness there, but as you move further forward from that, the earthiness just smoothens out a little bit, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing coming out of the beer, which I can certainly appreciate. Most of the hops in this beer, of course, will be dry hopping, late addition hopping. So yeah, worth bearing that in mind. With sourness, you don't really want IBU in the beer, but you get a little bit in this one. But as you move further forward on the front sides of your palate, as I say, you get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. Then round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy, and you can feel a little bit of zestiness there too, but you've got the fruity characters kind of pushing back against that So on that note, I think we should look at the front third of your palate then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a wee bit of bread crust, and the base of that front third of your palate is a really smooth, white bready and smooth kind of wheaty note there. You do get a wee bit of vanilla mixing into that as well, which I can certainly appreciate. But sitting on top of that, you've got all these adjuncty fruity notes and also a little bit of the oily character that's the extract from the Cascade hop as well. So on top of underneath the kind of fruity notes, you've got that kind of you get that kind of nice kind of figgy, juicy note from the Cascade. I do love a little bit of Cascade actually, and Cascade would fit really really well with these with the hops in this one. With the fruits in this one, sorry, I should say. But yeah, it really does work. But the fruity side of this beer is also really well executed. As I said earlier, I'm a big fan of these kind of berry sours. And the combination in this one is, pretty classic raspberries, blueberries and black currants. It's been done many, many a time and it works. That's why so many breweries go for it. But yeah, as I've said to you as well in other reviews too, for me, the thing that makes a good sour beer is how you go from that initial tart impact to how the beer mellows out. And this one is very, very smooth actually. It's a very drinkable sour beer that's almost sessionable in a sense, but it's really, really nice actually, and it takes a completely different approach to the other sour beers that I've had in recent times as well. So that's definitely noteworthy too. But the fruity side of the beer then, let's just examine this a wee bit more. So when you take this beer in, you certainly get a nice little bit. It's really kind of juicy in that sense. As we say, the backbone of the beer, of the fruity side of the beer, sorry, is the kind of oily figgy note from the Cascade. But on top of that, you can get the black curranty qualities, absolutely. And then just behind the front curve of the tongue, when you take it in, you get a little bit of sharpness and the tartness from the raspberries, and the blueberries just kind of sit behind that, and they give you the kind of lighter tartness, if that makes sense. So, as I say, oily fig from the hops, the kind of black currant sitting on top of that. Then at the front, you've got the slightly more abrupt tartness of the raspberry. Then behind that, you've got the more slightly juicy tartness of the blueberry, and you can feel that those kind of elements kind of spread around the front edges of your tongue too. As I've always told you, I personally find that when you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it always suppresses a little bit of the IBU when it comes to these kind of more sour beers actually. And we've had this with fruit IPAs as well. The fruitiness always kind of takes away a little bit from the IBU. So yeah, that's interesting with this one too. But this, as I say, it's a really lovely, drinkable, kind of oily, juicy berry fruit sour beer. So on that note, it gets a big thumbs up from me. I'm looking forward to trying the other one as well. The other one that we have is the triple fruited, and we've also got I think it's called citrus mix as well, but I don't think that's part of the Sourbit series. I think it's called Shake or something like that. I really don't know, but yeah, that'll be an interesting one to try too. But we'll do the triple fruited next, I think, and see how we get on with that. But as a berry sour, I think this is really nice, and I'd be very curious to know how much what the other sour beer breweries in Latvia are doing as well. Are they brewing these kind of more clear and slick sours like this one, or are there breweries that are brewing the big kind of creamy things as well? Because I honestly don't know. This might well be the first Latvian sour that I've ever reviewed, come to think of it, which is another interesting point. But yeah, lovely beer from Hopalaa. That should be the main takeaway from this tasting section. But let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then, because we've kind of covered it in bits and bobs throughout the video, but let's kind of round it up. So yeah, this one, for me, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is very, very smooth in it. This beer has a lovely kind of slick oiliness to it. Really nice. As I say, one of the slicker sour beers I've come across in recent times. It's very low IBU. It tells you on the can. So earlier it's 9 IBUs. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. You can feel a little touch of hoppy bitterness to it, but 9 IBUs absolutely makes sense for this one. Just a wee bit of floral note there. I think that's the thing that really lingers into the aftertaste with the beer. But as we've said, the malt base is very, very smooth. There's a bit of crispness in there, a wee bit of a kind of biscuity sweetness, and again, the smooth bready note underneath. But the juicy, fruity side of this one, I very much like. So a lovely kind of slick, juicy, fruity character to it, and just a little bit of tartness. This beer is certainly not the tartest of beers that you're going to come across. There's a wee bit of an impact when you take it in from the raspberries, and the kind of the sort of tanniny notes that you get from this one are from the raspberries, and those linger there. But everything else about this beer for me is pretty juicy actually. But yeah, I like this one, and it does make me curious to try a few more from this Sourbit range actually. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this one was the Sourbit Triple Berries, a 6.5% sour fruit sour ale of some description. I think it might be a Goza with the sea salt added into it, but whatever it is, it's a really, really nice beer, and I'm glad that we got to review this one for you. So big thumbs up to Hopalaa for this, and I'm looking forward to the other two sour beers that we've got coming up. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hopalaa Brewery as well, and we will return to these guys quite soon. We've got another 5 beers, I think it is, to review from these guys, and I will try and make sure I get through all of those over the next little while. But yeah, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and make sure you check out some of these Hopalaa sour beers. Slàinte just now.